show you something.
Oh, gosh.
My name's Javier Becerra, and I have the privilege to serve as the Secretary of Health and Human Services under President Joe Biden.
So looking at that video that we made 3 years ago when I first started, as I'm taking off that mask, as you're seeing the empty U.S. Capitol Mall behind me because in those days we couldn't go out.
Hola, soy Javier Becerra.
What a difference 3 years makes.
I want to begin with the new administration and the most pressing crisis facing the country.
We can do better. We can not only control COVID, but get us back to real normality. But it takes everybody, all hands on deck.
It was a difficult time 3 years ago. The COVID pandemic had brought so much to a halt and shut so much down. We barely had access to the vaccine. It had just started. And 3 years ago, we were beginning to see what too often happens, the disparities in America where those who have were gaining access to vaccines. Those who have not were the ones being left behind. What a difference 3 years makes. Nearly 700 million vaccine shots have gone into the arms of Americans today. We knew we had work to do. President Biden made it very clear. We have to keep Americans healthy so we can keep our economy healthy. And it took a lot of work.
Today offers further proof that the soul of America is vibrant, the future of America is bright, and the promise of America is real and just beginning.
So when the president signed the Inflation Reduction Act, there was a lot of hope. But I suspect there was a lot of skepticism as well. Today, the Inflation Reduction Act, or as I like to call it, the president's lower cost prescription drug law, is making a difference. Because today, if you are a diabetic and need insulin, you're no longer paying the $100, $200 a month for your insulin. You're paying $35 a month if you're under Medicare. Maybe for some, the difference between $117 and $35 isn't big every month. For some people, it's the difference between paying your rent or buying that week of groceries.
It is the first time in our living history that we have an opportunity to actually negotiate with the pharmaceutical industry to get the best prices.
The Inflation Reduction Act is making it possible for Americans to have fighters on their side like President Biden, negotiating to drive down the cost of prescription medication, something that 3 years ago we couldn't do because it was prohibited. Today, far different world than 3 years ago, and Americans will continue to see more progress from the Inflation Reduction Act.
Leaders throughout the country are speaking publicly. People who are role models are talking about some of their own experiences and past, and it's becoming clear to those who are hurting that they're not alone.
Mental health, mostly because COVID really surfaced it, is no longer behind the curtain. When 9 of 10 Americans in this country tell you that America's experiencing a mental health crisis, it is hard to ignore. At the Department of Health and Human Services, we're doing anything but ignoring this issue.
What we're doing today is helping communicate to people what 988 is. 988 988
988 is now available to help people who are experiencing a mental health crisis or challenge. And they can dial those 3 digits, or they can text, or they can chat, and they will receive someone who's there to offer them help and services and follow.
The landmark legislation has surpassed projections and broken the all-time enrollments record for the 3rd consecutive year.
3 years does make a difference. And what a difference those 3 years have made when it comes to access to care. At the same time that President Biden has made it possible for more Americans to have access to health insurance, a large segment of that population, women, today have fewer rights than they had 3 years ago.
22 years into the 21st century, and nearly 50 years after Roe v. Wade, some, mostly men, seek to impose their judgment over every woman in America who may seek to exercise her constitutional right to privacy and personal decision-making.
So on the day that the Supreme Court issued the Dobbs decision, which dismantled the Roe versus Wade constitutional protections on reproductive rights, I was in Missouri, in a Planned Parenthood clinic, and I witnessed immediately the effects of the Dobbs decision. That morning, we were talking about how we had to continue to champion access to health care for women. We finished the session. We got word of the Dobbs decision being issued, and immediately that clinic had to stop taking appointments from women who were seeking reproductive health care services. It was a moment where, for many, including those in the room, their life had changed. It is hard sometimes for me to believe that I'm the first secretary in the history of the United States to visit a clinic that offers abortion care services, because it is health care at the end of the day, and a Secretary of Health and Human Services should be prepared to go everywhere in America where health care services are offered. Today, we continue to fight to make sure that every woman has access to the health care she needs. For me, making the biggest difference I can is the most important thing, and having a base of support, principally my family, gives me the chance to leap every day. I've had a chance to work with a president who keeps telling me to jump higher. So I'm going to keep leaping as long as I can. Sky's the limit.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm really excited.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.